Hey guys, welcome back to another Harmonious Mind Chat. And today's topic is what I want for African people, what I want for Black people. Because, we gotta say Black because people confuse, diasporans and continental Africans all around the board. For a dynasty to be built or to be principal. So a lot of people say, oh, empire, let's build an empire. Empires fall, and dynasties a lot of the time are stronger and they're not as infiltrated and broken down, and they don't fall like empires because dynasties are built on hereditary leaders. It's built on family. And this is going to get into my second point of healing within the Black family for, the structural dysfunctions or all around dysfunctions to be addressed and dealt with, and for healing to really take place, because that is how a dynasty will be built. That's how strength among us will be established in a groundbreaking way. So yeah, for comfortability to be challenged, for that to end, people are comfortable here. That's why they're not challenging themselves. Okay, one, people are asleep, but also you have the people that are kinda almost there but not there, and a lot of times it's because they're comfortable. They got all these luxuries here, all these fancy things, and they don't want to not be comfortable for the liberation of all. And that has to do with the European ideal of individualism, which is very much so has been passed down to Black people, and we have to get back into communal culture and community, a communal culture, and comfortable. Like right now I'm a bit like, I'm trying to remember how can I really go into this, because y'all just too comfortable. A lot of people who live in the developed world are just too comfortable to even, they're so comfortable that they don't know they're in bondage. They're so comfortable that they don't know that this is not okay. That what's happening, or they're so comfortable that they don't want to challenge and, challenge the system, challenge themselves. The fact that people have a problem with moving to other nations on the continent, the number one thing is comfortability, because all these luxuries are not going to be considered. And if you think about it, it was June 21st, 1945. It was like a serious shutdown in Nigeria. And I couldn't see that happening here because people are too comfortable. They're too coddled. They're too infantile to really shut everything down, not go to work, and just be in the streets and seriously strike and boycott. And shout out to June 21st. That's my birthday. It's interesting because June 21st it's quite an important day all around. The circumference of the earth was measured at summer solstice, the longest day on earth, longest day, and you have, African history, included in that day as well. So yeah, people are too comfortable here to really go on strike and really shut it down. People are not prepared, and they're too comfortable to really go on strike, not go to work, So that's one thing. Well, another thing, for our intelligences to be properly nurtured in a proper environment, in an environment where it's not a struggle to be inspired, it's not a struggle, or your inspiration is not going to be, interrupted, and you're in a space where there's constant universal and environmental facilitation that aids in your intelligences, whether that's spiritual or the other intelligences that tend to be more, you would say, left brain, because spiritual intelligences would be dance, cinema, creative art, those other types of, in that realm, in that field. Yeah, so that is, and people have to understand that being in an environment as such, it makes it harder for your intelligences to be nurtured and to be facilitated in order for you to really be, at your highest level, and to really be up there in what you're doing in your work. So, and people make it happen here, but just imagine if you were in the proper environment. Of course, life is going to have its challenges, but when there's unnecessary circumstances and things that you don't necessarily have to face, because only reason why you're facing these are because they're conditional, circumstantial, and environmental to the location you're in. So you have to understand, those come with it. But if you were to change the space in your location, sometimes that's where an influx of inspiration comes, and your greatest work comes out of that. So, another one, to understand only so much healing can occur in the place where the trauma was, occurred, or the illness occurred, was onset, or where you actually took on these ailments, these, things that are holding you back, or, that require you to heal. So, there's only so much healing that can be done in an environment that doesn't permit it, and where suffering occurred. It's only so much healing that can occur. You get to the point where it's like, okay, now I've done all I could do in this space, and now there's a block because of the conditions, the environment, the circumstances that come with being in this location. And I'm talking about the US and the Western world, the developed, the European power stations, power locations. Another thing I want for African people is to know and understand that Africa is home. Even if you are, hereditarily a Paleo-American, so you were one of those people who were here when, of the diaspora, who was here when the Europeans got here. If that is, in your lineage, even if you, but when before Pangea occurred, you were at the center, the home of mankind, which is Africa. So you got to understand Africa's home, because this is, our lineage is connected to that, our blood is connected to that. I mean, what else is there to say? Nationalism and where you happen to be born doesn't really tie into where your lineage and your ancestry goes back into, and where mankind and humankind began. Nationalism doesn't trump that at all. And, nationality doesn't trump that at all. Okay, the other one I want, this one, for African people to understand the anthropological culture of pale-skinned individuals. So Mzungus, Yorugus, white people, Asiatic people, you know, Chinese, Japanese, etc. You know, the pale-skinned folk. To understand that historically and anthropologically, neurologically, biologically, you know, there's all these things if you think about it, you know. One, if you're just looking at it from an aspect, a cultural, anthropological, cultural, a Sealy type of aspect, you're going to see that each time Europeans came in contact with an indigenous population, genocide occurred, suffering occurred for those indigenous people. You know, they violated them. They really just went off and did terrible things, you know. You can see that with the Aborigines in Australia. You see that with the Paleo-Americans here, you know, that we're here in the US. You also see that with the Mongolian descendants / Native Americans. Because when I say Paleo-Americans, I'm talking about the black Native Americans. And when I say Mongolian descendants, I'm talking about the lighter skinned, you know, the lighter skinned indigenous people as well that were here. And then if you think about the city people in India, you know, or the Jodowa people, well, I won't say city people because they actually escaped to the mountainous areas in India, but the Jodowa people are native. You know, you can just go on and on throughout Asia and throughout the world, you know, in relation to indigenous populations that have came in contact. You know, the Tainos, we can go on and on about this. It's like, this is why history keeps repeating itself, because people fail to go back and to really look and read and, you know, think about what occurred, you know. Step away from the illusion box, the TV, step away from your phone, get into a book, get into some history, and just look at how things have happened. That's why this thing keeps happening with the Black Lives Matter and, you know, black oppression, because people have not totally understood the asyli of pale-skinned folk. They have not, because if you see that this is the anthropological culture of them, and this is something they've been doing since they've been on Earth, you know, since they came in contact with indigenous populations, there's been havoc that they've caused. When they came in contact with the Aborigines in Australia, the Aboriginals, they gave them food that made them sick, and they started to get these ailments and they started to suffer. And then next thing you know, the population is going down and down and down of the Aborigines, I can't say it, in Australia. So that's just one thing. That's just one example. And that is the Sealy. But if you look at it also from a biological, neurological aspect, then you're getting into the, one second. Oh, it's getting dark. Then you're getting into the deficits. Okay, if you look at, you know, how the lack of melanin cellularly affects them and neurologically affects them, and then that translates also into a spiritual realm as well, because people think spirituality is mystic, but it is also not just mystic. You see it. You have the seen and the unseen. So that's one. And that's just, you know, that goes into understanding the serious psychological terror that has been committed against us. People are too scared and they don't have the strength to really go through history and see what has happened and to connect the dots and to see it holistically. And then when you see it that way, then you see the asyli of them. Then you see, you know, what I'm talking about. this is a big one, to understand that, oh, it's getting dark, to understand that slavery is not the only part of our history. You know, it's not the beginning of our history, and that is a major problem with, you know, ADOS, you know, Americans, African Americans, diasporans here in the US. They don't know who we were before we got here, which is a major problem, because then that becomes a problem into knowing thyself, knowing one's culture, knowing one's lineage, knowing one's history. You know, slavery is not our only history, you know. Mali Empire, you know, the Zulus, Mansa Musu, or I think I'm saying his name right. It's so much, you know. It's so much history, you know. Thomas Sankara, you know what occurred in, you know, Nigeria with them breaking from British rule, you know. It's so much, you know. The Zulus, even way back, you know, the Fulanis. It's so much that people don't know, you know. And it's all, I say, always be on a conquest for knowledge, especially as a diasporan. Be on a conquest for knowledge, for African history, so that you don't only know slavery. And then you have the misinformation with slavery. A lot of people don't know slavery was in the North and it ended in 1827. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't make those connections to Wall Street and, you know, downtown New York, Lower Manhattan. So yeah, and you know, also when it comes into the serious psychological terror, it's a serious spell that has been put on us as a people, and that's something that I want for African people, Black people to understand. Yeah. Another thing I want for Mzungus to be kicked out, to be banned from Africa, honestly, because it is so much terrible things that happen. One, they go there for sex. They go there for sex tourism. Then you have, you know, pedophilic rings and pedophilic trafficking, pedophilic sex tourism, you know, children dying due to, you know, what's happening in Congo with like mining, as far as, you know, diamonds and gold and rubies in Kenya. When you understand why Africa is underdeveloped, then you understand why Zungus need to be banned from the continent. Yeah, for the powers to be cut off of the resources, you know, if that was to really occur, the developed world would be shook. You know, it would be a problem, because the only way, a lot of developed nations only know how to be developed because it's, you know, developed nations have, and you know, they were in a period of industrialization. There's materialism and material wealth in these places, and you don't really see ecological harmony. You don't see harmony within the ecosystem in a lot of these places, and if you look at that from an environmental aspect, and then you look at it from a structural aspect as well, a societal structural aspect, you know. To understand that, you know, I used to be someone, even in my political philosophy class, you know, and they told me in the arguments, in the debate, that it can't be kumbaya. And at that point, you know, one second. At that point, you know, I was like, you don't know what you're talking about. But I had a full circle moment, and I was like, whoa, it can be a kumbaya sing and dance to hold hands of all colors, of all people, because of the asili of the pale-skinned folk. You know, they don't want their genetic annihilation, you know, but I ain't gonna get too much into that because this video is already for people who have a bit of that knowledge. So if you understand the ISIS papers, then, and if you understand, you know, a bit of what I'm saying, then I'm speaking to the right person, you know. But, you know, it was in a political philosophy class, you know, we were talking about, you know, the things happen to the Native Americans and if they should be compensated. And it's always this, I'm not even going to get into compensation because you can't compensate someone for genocide. You know, you can't give somebody land for killing their people. You cannot, you know, give somebody a casino for genocide, you know, and it was more than one form of genocide with them, you know. But, you know, the guy who was a pale-skinned Yoruba, Mzungu, whatever, he was saying, you know, the Native Americans didn't sail around and, you know, do what the Europeans did, and they weren't developed. And at the time, I wish I knew this. Like, I just was like, oh, that is such a bias, and the statement was racially fueled, ignorantly fueled, because only reason the Europeans were sailing is because they stole that, they saw that concept in Africa with boat making, and then they took that concept to sail and to explore. So a lot of people don't understand there's African origins to a lot of things in this world that Europeans have put their name on, you know? So in that moment, that's when they were basically saying it can be all kumbaya. But like I say, in higher education, there's like this indoctrination and there's like this talking in code, like this hidden thing, because I didn't have the full circle moment till later, looking back on that moment, because of course no one's gonna say these things, no one's gonna say the truth in the classroom, they're not. So yeah. And you know, another thing, a lot of these terroristic behaviors and these illnesses like pedophilia, bestiality, and oppression of people originated and started with the pale-skinned folk. It started with them, like, so yeah, so that's another reason why this kumbaya, sing all and have a dance, you know. I used to be one of those people that was like, yeah, I wanted that to happen, and somehow I saw that being able to happen, but no, it's not gonna happen, because they're, like I say, the asili and the neurological, biological deficit. Yeah. Yeah, so, and my last one is similar to the other one, which is, you know, but this is a mindset thing. You know how I was saying, for them to be cut off from resources in Africa, but they also need to be cut off from African affairs, because a lot of these leaders are being swayed with Western influence, with nice items and nice things, and, you know, you do this, we'll do this for you particularly. You know, sometimes there's corruption, and then sometimes the people are just dully asleep. They're just sleep, and, you know, they go to these UN meetings, and they go to these meetings, you know, these conferences after, or AFTA, the African Trade Agreement, they go to these conferences, and or whatever type of conference, you know, then Europeans become involved in African affairs, and they do this with their informants. You know, everybody in your skin ain't your friend. Everybody that look like me and my kin. But the problem is black people don't really understand that. They don't understand that. So that's why, if you think about it, a lot of these informants have been black. If you think about it here, you know, with Nation of Islam, the UINA with Marcus Garvey, and then on the continent with Thomas Sankara, you know, the informants were people in your skin. And it was because, you know, Europeans were in African affairs. You know, they cannot not be in our stuff, you know, because if they're not in our stuff, they're not gonna thrive, you know, but they need to be cut off. You know, it's time to cut them off. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching. Love, peace, blessings. See ya.